Glass Pop Media.
Welcome back to the fastest and funnest 5-minute dive into history. It's History with Mr. B. Today's episode is episode 8, Do You Believe in Miracles? And this week, we'll be covering the events that happened from February 20th to February 24th. Let us begin. All right. Our day in history, February 20th, 1902, very famous, iconic photographer Ansel Adams was born 121 years ago today. Who was Ansel Adams, you said? Well, take a look at these pictures. I'm sure you've seen them before. He was a landscape photographer and environmentalist. He was known for his black and white iconic images of the American West, and he was a lifelong advocate for environmental conservation. He was given his first camera at age 12 at Yosemite National Park, and the rest is history. His iconic black and white images help establish photography among the fine arts, and his most famous photo was Face of a Half Dome. Here it is, here. All right, so now I'm going to take a little turn. Let's talk more about Ansel Adams. He was dyslexic. And if you know what that is, dyslexia is a processing disorder. Usually people with dyslexia are highly intelligent, and this was the early 1900s. So he was actually asked to leave school because he couldn't keep up, both socially and academically with his peers, and he was kind of picked on. So the good news here is if you have a learning disability like dyslexia, it's okay, because you're not alone. I'm going to tell you some other people with this dyslexia, and you're going to be shocked. Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Robin Williams, Pablo Picasso. So just because somebody has a processing disorder doesn't mean they're not intelligent and they can't express themselves. So let's raise a little awareness for dyslexic people and share this video and just do them a solid. But happy 121st birthday, Ansel Adams. You are a legend, as my 10th graders would say. Oh my goodness, this day in history, February 21st, 1916, 107 years ago today, the Battle of Verdun in World War I. Let me give you the major players here. It was France versus Germany. It was originally planned by the German Chief of General Staff, Erich von Falken, to secure victory for Germany on the Western Front. The aim was to crush the French army before the Allies grew in strength and before the British forces could help them. The Battle of Verdun took place where it did because the French fortress of Verdun was, along a river, and it was a fortified fortress along the river. And the Germans figured if they can knock that out, they can also disrupt the French communication lines. Well, the Germans were wrong. This battle was so bloody, and it was actually the longest battle of World War I, often called the Great War. This battle lasted all the way till December 8th, 1916, and I'm going to tell you that it was a French victory, but listen to this. French casualties amounted to 400,000, German casualties about 350,000. So you have 750,000 people died in one battle. And it could also be missing people or injured people. When we say casualties, it could be all three. But ultimately, the result was a French victory. And never forget that World War I and World War II were basically the same war with a 25-year timeout in the middle. It was the same players, and it was the same world powers. So this day in history, 107 years ago today, Battle of Verdun, and what a battle it was.
There were days where we thought we wouldn't make it out, but we stuck it out. Today's our day. Today's our day. There were nights we would fight, no end in sight, nothing was right. Tonight's our night. Tonight's our night. I'll fight for you until this life is over. There's no giving up here, babe.
Oh boy, I'm super glad you're here today. This day in history, February 22nd, 1980. Do you believe in miracles? The United States defeats the Soviet Union in ice hockey, but it was much more than just a game. Let me explain. This was democracy versus communism. This was capitalism versus socialism. This was good versus evil in the eyes of many from the United States. It was East versus West. It was unbelievable. The United States won an upset game of 4-3 over the Soviet Union. Now, let me explain something. Soviet Union, 4-time defending Olympic gold medalist, favored to win. Also, Finland, plus 700 odds that year, favored to win. The United States was 1,000-1. This was the equivalent of your high school football team beating the champion NFL champion Pittsburgh Steelers, Super Bowl champions, in an exhibition game. This was the greatest underdog story. In fact, Sports Illustrated lists this as the #1 sporting event of the 20th century. Now, I'm going to get a little bit deeper than this. I've only got a minute in. The United States did not win the gold medal by defeating the Soviet Union. In 1980, the medal round was a round robin. So actually, we had to play and beat, I believe, Finland to win. And the crazy thing is, we were losing 2-1. I say we, the United States was losing 2-1 at the end of the second period. They needed to beat Finland to win. Now, Coach Brooks turns to his players in between, in the locker room, right before the third period and says, and I'm going to leave some of the explicit words out, but he says like this: if you guys lose this game, you're going to take it to your grave. And nobody said a word. He gets to the door, he turns around and he says, to your grave. He leaves. USA ends up beating Finland 4-2, winning the gold medal. Now, the Soviets played in the bronze medal match, and they were so angry. They beat Sweden 9-2, and they refused to take their, the bronze medals. They refused to take them home. That's how angry they were, and the Soviet media had a field day with that. But it was on this day, the miracle on ice, and Al Michael's greatest call: do you believe in miracles? Yes, I do. February 23rd, 1945, 78 years ago today, U.S. Marines raised the iconic flag, the American flag, the iconic picture in Iwo Jima. Here's the whole story. February 19th, 1945, the United States invaded Iwo Jima as a part of its island hopping strategy to defeat Japan. Iwo Jima originally wasn't a target, but what was happening was the Japanese were using it as a warning station for the American bombers, and they had like a really great response. So we had to knock that island out. Now, there was only 18,000 Japanese soldiers on the island, but they were dug in, entrenched, and the Japanese were fighting for honor. That's why it took 70,000 Americans to storm that island and finally capture it. Iwo Jima is a volcanic island. I'll show you a picture here. It's kind of shaped like a trapezoid. From the air, it looks like a lopsided black pork chop. The island was heavily fortified, and the Marines suffered massive casualties. The Marines are my heroes, man. You got to give it up for them. Actually, as the flag was raised, the iconic picture that you know, was the second flag raising. There were two flag raisings that day. The second one was for the camera, and they used a larger flag. But this was a historic event for the United States Marines, the United States Armed Forces, and a turning point in the South Pacific theater of World War II. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to share this video. History with Mr. B is on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So wherever you're watching it, thank you very much. I appreciate you all. Psst, do you like drama? Of course you do. I'm glad you're here. February 24th, 1803, 220 years ago today, the Supreme Court rules on the very famous historic landmark case, Marbury versus Madison. Let me explain. It was the election of 1800. You got two people. You got Thomas Jefferson, and he's a Democratic Republican. I know if you've seen Hamilton, or you know the songs, you got Thomas Jefferson. And on the other side, you got John Adams. He's running for re-election. He's a Federalist. He knows he's not going to win. So what he does is he stacks the court with this Midnight Judges Act, where he appoints all these different justice of the peace and judges for District of Columbia, D.C. And he appoints a whole bunch of them within a few weeks. The letters are signed saying, this is your job, this is your job, this is your job, and they're sealed. And John Marshall was the Secretary of State, Chief Justice John Marshall. He didn't get a chance to deliver them all. So that administration ends. Here comes Thomas Jefferson, the Democratic Republican. Now his Secretary of State is James Madison. Madison was told by Thomas Jefferson, don't deliver those letters. The letters were basically, hey, you got a job, you're a judge. Well, there was one guy named William Marbury. I believe he was a judge or maybe a justice of the peace. He was mad. So he wants to take them to court, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, and say, hey, you have legally held this letter, and it's my job. Well, Chief Justice John Marshall rules, and he says, you know what, you're right. That letter should get delivered to you. I will make them deliver it. It is your job, but I can't say. It's not the court's place to say. So this is the concept of judicial review. And to make all these facts just stick a little bit better, it goes like this. If any law exceeds what the U.S. Constitution says, it's the Supreme Court's job to strike down that law. And it doesn't matter how it was made or how it was passed. If a law contradicts the Constitution, that law is null and void. So it's the Supreme Court's judicial review that was enabled by this case. And it was a landmark case. It was drama over, rich dudes that don't want to give jobs and papers to each other. But it did establish the Supreme Court as a powerful entity as opposed to the legislative and judicial branches. I hope this video helped. This is the end of episode 8. I thank you for watching. History with Mr. B is on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and of course TikTok. It doesn't matter where you find it. I just appreciate liking, commenting, sharing, following, or subscribing. This is Mr. B, and I'll see you next week for episode 9. Thanks for watching.
Hee-haw!